Thanks for coming out and watching the oxymoronic Reddit Professional Show, where I showcase the best and worst of the internet. Here I comment on brilliant and hilarious comment chains regarding dumb shit on the internet for you to enjoy. Make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell button so that you get notifications every time we come up with a new video. Enjoy this week's show.
Larger unit in apartment building is going for less than my studio. Anything I can do? Just heard in the elevator someone showing people units. They said a one-bedroom is going for $1,200. I'm in a alcove, a fancy word for studio, for $1,424. Anything I can do? I just signed for second-year lease back in October. Edit what I learned. I could ask to transfer my lease to the larger unit. The larger unit might be cheaper because it's on a lower floor or have a weird layout, bad view, or next to the trash chute. It's Minneapolis in winter. They may be getting a break because of the weather. I re-signed my lease, so I'm probably sold. This thread gave me lots of tips on how to negotiate my lease for next year. You are free to ask for your rent to be lowered, but there isn't much incentive for them to do that now that you're locked into a lease. Realize also that many buildings offer lower rents to new tenants to get their feet in the door. It can also depend on the time of the year. Rent in summer months is often more expensive since more people are moving. At the beginning of December, my best friend found out there was a two-bedroom in their building going for the same rate as their one-bedroom like 2 months after they had renewed their lease. They asked their landlord about it and he let them literally just transfer their lease and move in. I was shocked it was so easy for them. Maybe because they were good tenants that were still employed, or because he thought it would be easier to find someone for the one-bedroom. Regardless, it is worth it to inquire. Literally just did the same thing and moved into my new unit today. 2BR/2BA with nicer features in my same building for only $200 more than my 1BR/1BA. My same old unit is going for $600 less than what I was paying. I thought the leasing office would give me a hard time, but the manager literally sent me an entire giant list of open units with their market rate that's advertised on the website for new tenants. My boyfriend just moved in with me as well, and since he wasn't on the lease before, we managed to get 10 weeks free on top. It's a renter's market right now, especially in market rate apartments. Buildings are constantly bumping rent 12 to 18% for second-year leases, so the grass isn't always greener. But yeah, ask your people about lowering the rent, and see if you can snag a larger stabilized place. 18% rent increase. Yeah, I'd be moving every year. I'm Scandinavian though, and unions are strong here. We have a renters' union that negotiates rent increases for everyone, and offers legal advice and representation should you need it. They're really good. Around here it's standard for rents to increase about 1.5–2% each year. Basically keeping up with projected inflation, even though inflation has been lower than that for a few years. Socialism, yo, it's not too bad. Just a thought, but it could be that your alcove is in a nice quiet part of the building where the one bedroom may be next to a garbage chute or an elevator and subject to 24-hour-a-day noise. The price difference may reflect more than just size. Depending on the age of the complex, it could also be renovated versus not renovated. I once looked at a place in North Carolina that had equivalent apartments about $200 apart because one had updated appliances, new floors, etc. True. I was just looking at apartments and this one company had a $891 for 475 SQ and a $891 for 795 square. One was just renovated and also at the top with loft ceilings. The latter hadn't been renovated for a few years and the finishes it had were very ugly. Prices change monthly. Not a lot of people move during winter, lower prices to get people to move. Some places prices change daily. There's pricing software called YieldStar that takes market survey data and adjusts all prices based on the market as well as the specific community's availability. If the community goes from 3 to 2 one-bedroom homes, the price on them will go up. If once goes on notice, it will go down. Prices can also change depending on move-in date to adjust for time held off the market. Also, it charges you for the period of time the leasing agents failed to lease the unit. It's good for maximizing revenue, but it's garbage from every other perspective. Once you've signed your lease, you're contractually obligated and there's little you can do. If you're in or near a city, COVID likely played a part in new tenants receiving a lower rent due to the current environment. If your lease expires soon, you probably have some negotiating power. Many people don't realize that you can absolutely negotiate a lower renewal rate on a lease, especially with smaller companies. I was renting an apartment in North Carolina in 2009/2010. Housing prices were in the toilet. The company that owned my building was in bankruptcy and had not been paying for landscaping, maintenance, etc. They wanted to up my rent by 10%. At the time, I was 7 months pregnant and 100% not moving, but they did not know that. I told them my apartment had gone down in value since I signed 12 months ago, and I absolutely was not going to pay a dime more in rent, especially since they were not maintaining the property. Negotiated for a 24-month lease at my exact same rate. When I came into the office 8 months pregnant to sign the paperwork, they were kicking themselves hard. Then they knew I was totally bluffing and threatening to move. But you have to do all that before you resign your lease. Once you've signed, you are stuck. My lease expired 2 months ago. Management wanted to increase my rent by 10% and subsequently offered to keep my same rate if I signed for another 12 months. Meanwhile, I found they were listing my identical floor plan for $250 less per month than my current rate, and a larger unit for $150 less. This is due to COVID. I explained that if they didn't reduce my rent by $250, I would simply non-renew and immediately apply for the available listing. Landlords and management companies will almost always take guaranteed revenue over risking vacancy. As others have mentioned, the best you can do is ask for your rent to be lowered. Your lease is a contract, and you're obligated to fulfill your commitment, pay, and your landlord is obligated to fill theirs, provide safe and legal housing. So, legally speaking, you have no recourse. Now you should think about other potential remedies, and for that, you should try to think like the landlord. Landlords typically want to keep people who pay their rent timely in the building, and for as long as possible. Have you paid all of your rent on time for your first 15 months? If so, I would approach the landlord like this, in person ideally. Mrs. Landlord, I like living here, as you know, and last October I signed a lease at $1,424 per month for my studio. I noticed recently that prices have dropped in the building, and one-bedroom apartments are now renting for $1,200 per month. I've always paid on time, and I'd be willing to extend my lease out to a year from today, or longer if you're comfortable with that, if you'd be willing to drop my rent to the current market rates. Some landlords will go along with this, many won't. The problem you have is that you don't have much leverage now. The time to negotiate is before signing the lease, but that might not have been applicable to you as this lower rent may be started just this year. Last year, for the first time in my life, I was able to negotiate my rent down as I renewed my lease. I noticed that new tenants were being charged less, so I told the landlord, I'd love to stay, I've always paid on time, but I'm not willing to pay more than new people who are moving in, and she just lowered it. Had I signed my lease at their initial proposed rate, they likely wouldn't have agreed to reduce my rent later. If you are in your lease, there is likely not much you can do. What few people realize, however, is that you can negotiate your lease amount. This is clear evidence that you should absolutely negotiate a lower rent for your next lease. Consider the costs it takes for them to find and acquire a new tenant. Then the cost of any time of that room to be empty is substantial as well. For example, if you tell them you're going to move out and they have it empty for 1 month, they lose out on $1,424. It's reasonable to assume it would take time to fill it, so therefore it's reasonable to always ask for your rent to be lower by about 1 month spread over the year, which would be about $118 less per month. In this case, since you know they are valuing some units much lower, when your lease is up, tell them you found a very comparable place for $1,100 per month, and ask how well they can do to match that. If they don't counteroffer, I would move because clearly they are charging you over market rate. Talk to the landlord and ask to move to the larger unit. Ask if you can move to the larger unit and keep paying $1,424 and they might say yes. Assuming you value the space. I'd want to see it before deciding though, as someone else said, he might be leaving a quiet alcove with a good view for an apartment next to the trash chute with a view of a wall or something unpleasant. Or it might have much older appliances or not been renovated as recently. I used to live in a decent one-bedroom apartment much cheaper than what the studios were going for. The catch was that it was next to a gas station, so the floodlights would make my apartment look like it was day during the night, and sometimes the trucks unloading gas will show up around 1 to 3 a.m. and are super loud. You can always ask. But you have no right to anything, and the landlord didn't do anything shady. You signed the contract. I assume the landlord has delivered on their side of the bargain. Prices fluctuate based on demand and other circumstances. It's like asking if you can get money back on the TV you bought 6 months ago, because it just went on sale. But, if you want to pursue a deal, the same circumstances that led them to lower prices may also apply to you. It's coronavirus, people aren't looking for apartments or can't afford them. The property owner needs revenue. If you are willing to re-up for another year, they might be willing to give you a deal of some kind because a good tenant in hand and a locked-in revenue stream could be better than chancing it if you move out. So, you can use the information you have as a bargaining chip for a new deal that helps the owner as well as you. But they're not going to just lower your rent for the rest of the lease and give you something for nothing. Especially if they need revenue or occupants so bad they are discounting available units. Thanks, this thread has taught me a lot about negotiating for the next time my lease is up.
If you enjoyed this week's effective way to waste time, hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. If you are enjoying the series, leave me a comment below. A special shout out to the content creators. You frickin' rock.